In a small, lively town where everyone seemed to know each other's business, there lived a woman named Clara. She wasn't the kind of person who stood out in a crowd. In fact, most people barely noticed her at all. Clara was in her mid-30s and worked as a librarian at the local high school. Her days were spent organizing books, helping students find resources, and quietly assisting teachers with various tasks. To the kids who passed through the library, she was just the book lady, a quiet, plain woman who wore simple clothes and rarely spoke unless spoken to. But there was so much more to Clara than anyone realized. Beneath her unassuming exterior lay a sharp mind and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Growing up, Clara had always loved learning. She devoured books on every subject she could get her hands on, from history to science to literature. However, life hadn't given her many opportunities to pursue formal education. Financial struggles forced her to leave school after completing only basic studies. But that didn't stop her. Instead, she turned to self-study, teaching herself everything she wanted to learn but couldn't afford to attend classes for. Her favorite subject by far was mathematics, especially calculus. There was something about the elegance of numbers and the beauty of solving complex problems that captivated her. She would spend hours poring over old textbooks, scribbling equations in notebooks, and working through problems late into the night. For Clara, math wasn't just a hobby, it was a passion. It was a world where logic ruled, and every question had an answer waiting to be discovered. Yet, despite her deep love for the subject, no one knew about this hidden side of her. To the students and even some of the teachers, she was just the quiet librarian who kept to herself. One day, however, everything changed. It started during a particularly chaotic advanced calculus class taught by Mr. Hargrove, a strict but uninspired teacher. The classroom buzzed with restless energy as Mr. Hargrove wrote a complicated problem involving integrals on the chalkboard. He explained the question briefly, then turned to the class expecting someone to raise their hand with the solution. But as the minutes ticked by, not a single student dared to try. Frustrated by the lack of response, Mr. Hargrove let out an exasperated sigh. "Come on," he said, tapping the board impatiently. "This isn't rocket science. Even a simple woman off the street could solve this if they paid attention." His words carried a dismissive tone, clearly meant to shame his students into action. What he didn't realize, though, was that Clara happened to be sitting near the back of the room that day. She often came to observe classes when she had free time, curious to see how different subjects were taught. As Mr. Hargrove's comment echoed through the room, Clara felt a pang of indignation. She knew firsthand how hard calculus could be, and while his remark might have been intended as hyperbole, it stung nonetheless. The students around her chuckled, nervously, some whispering jokes about how absurd the idea of a random person solving such a problem was. One boy leaned over to his friend and joked, "Yeah, right. Like the librarian's gonna waltz in here and figure it out." His words drew more laughter, but Clara sat silently, her jaw tightening ever so slightly. She didn't say anything, not then anyway, but a seed had been planted in her mind. That evening, as Clara shelved books in the library, her thoughts kept drifting back to the calculus problem. She remembered seeing it written on the board and recalled enough details to reconstruct it in her head. Without thinking twice, she grabbed a notebook from her bag and began jotting down the steps to solve it. At first, it was just a way to pass the time, but as she worked through the problem, something shifted inside her. This wasn't just about proving Mr. Hargrove wrong or silencing the mocking voices in the classroom. It was about showing herself, and maybe others, that intelligence isn't defined by appearances or societal expectations. By the time she finished, Clara felt a strange mix of satisfaction and nervousness. She stared at the neatly written solution in her notebook, wondering what to do next. Should she show it to Mr. Hargrove? Would anyone even care? Part of her wanted to ignore the whole thing and go back to being invisible, but another part, the part that had spent years studying and growing in secret, knew she couldn't let this moment slip away. The next morning, Clara arrived at school earlier than usual. She clutched her notebook tightly as she made her way to Mr. Hargrove's classroom during lunch break. Her heart pounded in her chest as she knocked softly on the door before stepping inside. Mr. Hargrove looked up from his desk, surprised to see her standing there. "Can I help you?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Clara hesitated for a moment, clutching the notebook even tighter. I heard what you said yesterday," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "About the calculus problem. And I think I might have solved." A heavy silence fell over the room. Mr. Hargrove stared at her, clearly skeptical. Several students lingering nearby exchanged amused glances, clearly expecting this to end badly. One girl whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "What does she know about calculus?" But Clara didn't flinch. Ignoring their snickers, she stepped forward and picked up a piece of chalk from the tray beneath the chalkboard. With steady hands, she began writing out her solution step by step. As she worked, the room grew quieter. Even Mr. Hargrove leaned closer, intrigued despite himself. When she finally stepped back, every line of her solution checked out perfectly. It was flawless. "Well," Clara said softly, brushing chalk dust from her fingers. "I hope that helps." The room erupted into stunned silence. No one moved. No one spoke. For the first time in a long time, Clara allowed herself to feel a flicker of pride. She had done what no one expected her to do, and in doing so, she had opened the door to a future none of them could have predicted. The next morning, Clara arrived at school earlier than usual. She had spent most of the night going over her solution again and again, making sure every step was perfect. Her heart raced as she walked through the quiet hallways, clutching her worn notebook tightly to her chest. She knew what she was about to do was risky. After all, no one expected someone like her, a librarian who blended into the background, to step forward and challenge the status quo. But something inside her pushed her to take this leap. Maybe it was the sting of Mr. Hargrove's dismissive words or the mocking laughter of the students. Or maybe it was simply the desire to prove to herself that her years of self-study hadn't been in vain. Clara paused outside Mr. Hargrove's classroom, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. The door was slightly ajar, and she could hear him shuffling papers inside. Summoning her courage, she knocked softly before stepping in. Mr. Hargrove looked up from his desk, clearly surprised to see her standing there. His expression shifted from confusion to mild annoyance as he set down his pen. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone curt and impatient. Clara hesitated for a moment, gripping her notebook even tighter. I heard what you said yesterday," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "about the calculus problem, and I think I might have solved it." A heavy silence fell over the room. For a few seconds, Mr. Hargrove just stared at her, his brow furrowed. Then he let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You? Solve this." He gestured toward the chalkboard, where the same unsolved equation still lingered from the previous day. Several students who had been lingering nearby exchanged amused glances. One boy snickered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "What does she know about calculus?" Another muttered under their breath. "Probably got lucky guessing." Clara felt, her cheeks flush with embarrassment, but she refused to back down. She reminded herself why she was here. Not to seek validation, but to show that knowledge isn't confined to classrooms or titles. Without saying another word, Clara stepped forward and picked up a piece of chalk from the tray beneath the chalkboard. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned to face the board, but she steadied herself by focusing on the problem. Slowly, deliberately, she began writing out her solution step by step. As she worked, the room grew quieter. Even the students who had initially laughed now watched with growing curiosity. Mr. Hargrove leaned closer, his skepticism giving way to genuine interest as he followed along with her calculations. Clara moved methodically, explaining each part of the solution as she went. She started with the integral, breaking it down into smaller components and showing how they connected to form the larger equation. Then she tackled the limits, carefully demonstrating how to evaluate them without missing a single detail. Every line she wrote was precise, every number perfectly aligned. It was clear that she wasn't guessing. She truly understood the problem inside and out. As the final step came together, Clara stepped back and turned to face the room. "That's it," she said softly, brushing chalk dust from her fingers. "The solution is complete." The room erupted into stunned silence. No one moved. No one spoke. For several long moments, the only sound was the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Finally, Mr. Hargrove broke the silence. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. He stood up and walked over to the board, examining her work closely. After a minute, he nodded slowly. "It's correct. Every step checks out." The students were completely dumbfounded. Some stared at Clara with wide eyes, unable to reconcile the quiet librarian they thought they knew with the brilliant mathematician standing before them. Others whispered excitedly among themselves, marveling at what they had just witnessed. One girl raised her hand timidly and asked, "How did you learn all this?" Clara smiled gently, feeling a mix of relief and pride wash over her. "I've always loved learning," she explained. "Mathematics, especially calculus, has been a passion of mine for years. I've studied it on my own, reading books and practicing problems whenever I can. It's not about being smart. It's about being curious and willing to put in the effort." Her words struck a chord with many of the students. They had grown up believing that intelligence was something innate, something you either had or didn't. But Clara's story showed them that knowledge could be earned through dedication and hard work, regardless of your circumstances. Even Mr. Hargrove seemed affected, though he tried to hide it. He cleared his throat awkwardly and returned to his desk, avoiding eye contact with anyone. As Clara left the classroom, she couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. She hadn't set out to prove anything to anyone, but in solving that problem, she had done exactly that. Word of what happened spread quickly throughout the school. By lunchtime, nearly everyone was talking about the librarian who had stunned the calculus class with her brilliance. Some dismissed it as a fluke, while others marveled at her unexpected talent. For many, it forced them to reconsider their assumptions about the quiet woman who spent her days shelving books. Among those shaken by the revelation was Emily Carter, a senior known for her academic prowess and sharp tongue. Emily had initially joined in mocking Clara, dismissing her attempt as pitiable. But now, consumed by curiosity and perhaps a hint of guilt, she sought Clara out after school. She found her in the library organizing a stack of returned books. "Why didn't you tell anyone you're good at math?" Emily demanded, cornering Clara near the shelves. Clara looked up, startled by the sudden confrontation. "It wasn't something I thought people needed to know," she replied calmly. "Math is my passion, not a party trick." Emily pressed further, asking questions about derivatives, integrals, and theorems. To her astonishment, Clara answered every question, with clarity and depth. By the end of their conversation, Emily felt both humbled and inspired. She realized that Clara wasn't just smart, she was extraordinary. And unlike many of her peers, Clara didn't flaunt her intelligence or use it to belittle others. Instead, she shared her knowledge generously, eager to help anyone willing to learn. "I want to understand calculus better," Emily admitted finally, surprising even herself with her honesty. Would you teach me?" Clara smiled warmly. "Of course. Learning is always better when it's shared." From that day on, Emily became a regular visitor to the library during her free periods. Together, she and Clara worked through complex problems, discussing concepts and exploring new ideas. Their sessions attracted the attention of other students, some of whom began joining in. Before long, a small group had formed, meeting regularly to learn from Clara and support each other in their studies. For Clara, these interactions brought a joy she hadn't experienced in years. Teaching wasn't just about sharing knowledge, it was about inspiring others to see the beauty in learning. And for the students, Clara became more than just a librarian. She was a mentor, a role model, and a reminder that greatness often hides in the most unexpected places. Little did anyone realize, however, that this was only the beginning. Clara's quiet brilliance had opened a door, one that would lead to changes none of them could have predicted. Word of Clara's unexpected brilliance spread like wildfire through the school. By the end of the day, nearly every student and faculty member had heard about what happened in Mr. Hargrove's calculus class. Some dismissed it as a fluke or luck, while others marveled at her talent. For many, though, the revelation forced them to reconsider their assumptions about the quiet librarian who spent her days shelving books and helping students find resources. Among those most affected by the news was Emily Carter, a senior known for her academic achievements and sharp wit. At first, Emily had been one of the loudest voices mocking Clara when she walked into Mr. Hargrove's classroom with her notebook. But after witnessing Clara solve the problem flawlessly and realizing how much effort and understanding went into it, Emily felt a pang of guilt. She couldn't shake the image of Clara standing confidently at the chalkboard, calmly explaining each step of the solution as if it were second nature to her. Curiosity gnawed at Emily, driving her to seek Clara out after school. She found her, in the library, quietly organizing returned books. Without thinking twice, Emily approached her and blurted out, "Why didn't you tell anyone you're good at math?" Clara looked up, startled by the sudden question. After a moment, she smiled gently. "It wasn't something I thought people needed to know," she replied. "Math is my passion, not something I do to impress others." Emily hesitated, unsure how to respond. Then, gathering her courage, she asked another question. "How did you learn all this? You never went to college, right?" Clara chuckled softly. "No, I didn't go to college. But that doesn't mean I stopped learning. I've always loved reading and studying on my own. Calculus fascinated me, so I bought textbooks, worked through problems, and taught myself over time. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it." Her humility struck Emily deeply. Here was someone who had achieved mastery through sheer determination, yet she spoke about it without arrogance or pride. Inspired, Emily decided to push further. "Can you teach me more?" she asked impulsively. "I want to understand calculus better." Clara's eyes lit up with genuine warmth. "Of course," she said. "Learning is always better when it's shared." From that day on, Emily began visiting the library during her free periods. Together, she and Clara dove into complex problems, discussing concepts and exploring new ideas. Their sessions quickly attracted the attention of other students, some of whom joined in out of curiosity. Before long, a small group had formed, meeting regularly to learn from Clara and support each other in their studies. For Clara, these interactions brought a joy she hadn't experienced in years. Teaching wasn't just about sharing knowledge. It was about inspiring others to see the beauty in learning. And for the students, Clara became more than just a librarian. She was a mentor, a role model, and a reminder that greatness often hides in the most unexpected places. However, not everyone reacted positively to Clara's newfound fame. Some students resented her, feeling threatened by her intellect. They whispered behind her back, accusing her of showing off or trying to steal the spotlight from the teachers. Others dismissed her abilities altogether, claiming she must have cheated or gotten lucky with the problem she solved. Even among the faculty, opinions were divided. While some admired her dedication and skill, others viewed her growing influence with suspicion. Mr. Hargrove, in particular, grew increasingly irritable. He couldn't deny that Clara's solution to the calculus problem was flawless, but the fact that she had solved it, and done so in front of his entire class, gnawed at him. What bothered him even more was the way his students now flocked to the library to learn from her instead of attending his lectures. Several times he caught himself glaring at Clara during staff meetings, though he tried to hide his frustration behind a mask of indifference. One afternoon, tensions came to a head during a particularly heated discussion in Mr. Hargrove's calculus class. The topic was a challenging theorem, and the students were struggling to grasp its intricacies. Frustrated by their lack of progress, Mr. Hargrove snapped, "If you can't figure this out, maybe you should ask Clara. She seems to have all the answers." His sarcastic remark sparked an uproar. A few students laughed nervously, but others bristled at the insult. One boy raised his hand hesitantly and said, "Actually, sir, why don't we let Clara teach us? She explains things way better than you do." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Mr. Hargrove, whose face reddened with anger. That's Preposterous, he barked. She's not qualified to teach calculus. She doesn't even have a degree. But she knows the material, another student chimed in. Isn't that what matters? The argument escalated, with half the class siding against Mr. Hargrove and the other half defending him. Clara, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, chose not to intervene. She knew better than to make the situation worse, especially since emotions were running high. Instead, she slipped away unnoticed, leaving the students to hash things out among themselves. Despite the chaos, the incident planted an idea in the minds of several seniors. That evening, they gathered in the cafeteria to discuss what had happened. One girl suggested petitioning the principal to allow Clara to lead a guest lecture series on advanced mathematics topics. The idea gained traction quickly, and by the end of the meeting they had drafted a formal proposal. The next morning, a group of students marched into the principal's office, armed with signatures from nearly half the student body. At first, Principal Dawson was hesitant. Allowing a non-teaching staff member to give lectures was unprecedented, and he worried about potential backlash from parents or faculty members. But the students persisted, arguing passionately that Clara's expertise could inspire countless students to take an interest in math and science. Eventually, Principal Dawson relented, agreeing to let Clara conduct a trial lecture. If it went well, he promised to consider making the series permanent. News of the decision sent ripples of excitement through the school. Students buzzed with anticipation, eager to see whether the rumors about Clara's brilliance held true. Even some skeptical teachers admitted they were curious to witness her teaching style. As the date of the lecture approached, Clara prepared meticulously. She spent hours crafting examples and analogies that would resonate with her audience, determined to make the session both informative and engaging. Though nervous, she reminded herself why she was doing this, to share her love of mathematics and perhaps inspire others to embrace their own passions. On the day of the lecture, the auditorium was packed. Students filled every seat, while faculty members lingered near the back watching curiously. Even Mr. Hargrove attended, arms crossed tightly over his chest, clearly unhappy about the situation. As Clara stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. For a moment she stood there, taking in the sea of faces before her. Then, with a deep breath, she began to speak. "Thank you all for coming today," she said, her voice steady and warm. "I'm here because I believe math isn't just about numbers or formulas. It's about curiosity, creativity, and finding patterns in the world around us. My hope is that by the end of this session, you'll see calculus not as something intimidating, but as something beautiful and accessible." With that, Clara launched into her presentation. Using vivid examples and relatable analogies, she broke down abstract concepts into digestible pieces, captivating her audience within minutes. She explained derivatives by comparing them to the speedometer in a car, showing how they measure rates of change in real life. She illustrated integrals using slices of pizza, demonstrating how adding up small parts could reveal the whole. By the end of the hour, applause erupted throughout the room, echoing long after she finished speaking. Students rushed to congratulate her, peppering her with questions and thanking her for making calculus feel less daunting. Even Mr. Hargrove, though reluctant to admit it, found himself impressed by her ability to simplify complex ideas. For Clara, the lecture was a turning point. It wasn't just validation of her skills, it was proof that her passion could make a difference. And as she left the auditorium that day, surrounded by smiling faces and eager learners, she realized that her journey was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The success of Clara's first lecture sent shockwaves through the school. Students couldn't stop talking about how she had made calculus seem not only understandable, but also fascinating. Her ability to break down complex ideas into relatable examples left a lasting impression on everyone who attended. The buzz wasn't limited to just the students either. Even some of the teachers began to view her in a new light, recognizing her talent for teaching and her deep understanding of mathematics. Principal Dawson, impressed by the overwhelmingly positive response, decided to extend Clara's guest lecture series. He scheduled additional sessions, allowing her to cover a wider range of advanced topics in calculus and other areas of mathematics. News of these upcoming lectures spread quickly, drawing attention from students across different grades and even neighboring schools. What started as a one-time trial had blossomed into something much bigger, a movement that challenged traditional notions of education and expertise. Despite the excitement, not everyone was thrilled about Clara's growing influence. Mr. Hargrove remained particularly resentful. He felt overshadowed by her success and frustrated that his own classes were losing attendance as more students opted to attend her lectures instead. To make matters worse, some of his colleagues began comparing his teaching methods unfavorably to hers. Where he often relied on rigid formulas and rote memorization, Clara emphasized creativity, real-world applications, and critical thinking. It was clear which approach resonated more with the students. Mr. Hargrove's frustration reached its peak during a staff meeting when another teacher casually praised Clara's work. "She's really inspiring the kids," the teacher remarked. "Maybe we could all learn something from her style." The comment stung. Mr. Hargrove clenched his jaw and shot back. "Let's not forget she's just a librarian. She doesn't have formal qualifications or training. This is supposed to be a school, not a hobby club." His words hung heavy in the air, silencing the room. While no one openly disagreed with him, many exchanged uneasy glances. The tension between admiration for Clara's achievements and skepticism about her unconventional role continued to simmer beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Clara remained unaware of the brewing conflict. She was too focused on preparing for her next lecture, pouring hours into crafting engaging lessons and ensuring every concept was accessible to her audience. Her humility kept her grounded. She didn't see herself as extraordinary, just someone who loved what she did and wanted to share it with others. Still, the weight of expectations began to press on her shoulders. With each passing day, more people looked to her as a source of inspiration, and while she cherished the opportunity, she couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed. One afternoon, as Clara worked in the library, Emily approached her with a concerned expression. "Are you okay?" she asked. "You've been working nonstop since the last lecture. You look tired." Clara smiled faintly. "I'm fine, really. Just trying to keep up with everything. There's so much I want to teach and I don't want to let anyone down." Emily hesitated before speaking again. "Do you think maybe you're putting too much pressure on yourself? No one expects perfection from you, Clara. We just love learning from you because you make it fun." Her words struck a chord. Clara realized that she had been so focused on delivering flawless lectures that she hadn't fully appreciated the joy her students brought to her. Their enthusiasm and curiosity reminded her why she fell in love with mathematics in the first place. Teaching wasn't about being perfect. It was about connecting with others and igniting a spark of interest in them. With renewed determination, Clara dove into her preparations, reminding herself to embrace imperfection and focus on the bigger picture. When the day of her second lecture arrived, she walked onto the stage feeling lighter and more confident than ever. This time she opened with a personal story about her struggles with self-doubt and how math had become her refuge. The vulnerability in her voice resonated deeply with the audience, creating an immediate connection. As she moved into the main content, Clara tackled a notoriously difficult topic, multivariable calculus. Instead of diving straight into equations, she started with a simple analogy. "Imagine you're baking a cake," she said, holding up a mixing bowl for emphasis. Each ingredient represents a variable: flour, sugar, eggs. If you change one, it affects the entire recipe. That's essentially what happens in multivariable calculus. We study how changing one factor influences the whole system. The analogy drew laughter and nods of understanding from the crowd. Clara went on to explain gradients, partial derivatives, and vector fields using visual aids and interactive demonstrations. By the end of the session, students were actively participating, asking questions, and even debating solutions among themselves. The energy in the room was electric, a testament to Clara's ability to transform abstract concepts into something tangible and exciting. After the lecture, a group of students lingered behind to thank Clara personally. One boy shyly admitted, "I used to hate math, but now I actually look forward to it. You've changed the way I think about it." Another girl chimed in, I wish you were my regular teacher. You make everything so clear." Their heartfelt comments warmed Clara's heart, reaffirming her belief that teaching was more than just imparting knowledge. It was about empowering others to discover their potential. As she packed up her materials, she noticed Mr. Hargrove, lingering near the exit. His expression was unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Perhaps respect, perhaps regret. Whatever it was, Clara chose not to dwell on it. She had done what she set out to do: inspire. Word of Clara's second lecture spread even faster than the first. Local newspapers picked up the story, publishing articles about the librarian-turned-math whiz who was revolutionizing the way students learned. Parents began attending her sessions alongside their children, eager to witness her unique teaching style firsthand. Teachers from neighboring schools reached out, asking if they could observe her lectures or collaborate on projects. Clara's quiet brilliance had transformed her from an overlooked figure in the background to a celebrated figure in the community. Yet, despite the accolades, Clara remained humble. She continued balancing her duties as a librarian with her newfound role as an educator, refusing to let the attention go to her head. To her, the true reward wasn't fame or recognition. It was seeing the impact she had on others. Every time a student approached her with a question or expressed gratitude for helping them understand a challenging concept, she felt a sense of fulfillment that no award could match. Behind the scenes, however, tensions simmered. Some faculty members grew envious of Clara's popularity, fearing that her success might undermine their authority. Others worried about the precedent her lectures set, questioning whether it was appropriate for someone without formal credentials to take on such a prominent role. Principal Dawson found himself caught in the middle, torn between supporting Clara and addressing the concerns of his staff. To ease the mounting pressure, he called a meeting with Clara and a few key faculty members. "We need to find a way to integrate your contributions into the curriculum officially," he explained. "Your lectures are clearly benefiting the students, but we can't keep operating outside the system indefinitely." Clara listened thoughtfully, nodding as he spoke. "I understand," she replied. "I never intended to disrupt anything. I just want to help in whatever way I can." Together, they brainstormed ideas for incorporating Clara's expertise into the school's existing framework. One proposal suggested offering her a part-time position as a teaching assistant, allowing her to co-teach certain classes alongside certified instructors. Another idea involved creating a special elective course focused on applied mathematics, with Clara leading discussions and guiding projects. While these plans were still in the works, Clara continued giving her lectures, each one drawing larger crowds than the last. Her reputation extended beyond the school, attracting visitors from nearby towns and even college professors curious to see her methods in action. What had begun as a single act of courage, walking into Mr. Hargrove's classroom with a notebook, had grown into a phenomenon that challenged stereotypes and inspired countless individuals. Through it all, Clara stayed true to herself. She remained the same quiet, unassuming woman who loved books and numbers, yet she had proven that greatness often lies hidden in plain sight. And though challenges lay ahead, she faced them with the same resilience and optimism that had carried her this far. For Clara, the journey was far from over, but every step along the way reinforced her belief in the power of curiosity, dedication, and kindness. The day of Clara's third lecture arrived, and anticipation buzzed through the school like electricity. By now, her sessions had become the talk of not just the student body but also the wider community. Parents, teachers, and even curious visitors from neighboring towns packed into the auditorium, eager to witness the phenomenon everyone was raving about. The energy in the room was palpable, a mix of excitement and curiosity that seemed to amplify with each passing minute. Clara stood backstage, nervously adjusting the notes in her hands. She had always been comfortable speaking to small groups, but this was different. The sheer size of the audience intimidated her, and for the first time, she felt a pang of self-doubt creeping in. What if she stumbled over her words? What if she couldn't explain the concepts clearly enough? What if people realized she wasn't as knowledgeable as they thought? As if sensing her unease, Emily appeared beside her, offering a reassuring smile. "You've got this," she said firmly. "Just be yourself. That's what everyone loves about you." Clara took a deep breath and nodded. Emily was right. This wasn't about perfection. It was about sharing her passion and helping others see the beauty in mathematics. With renewed determination, she stepped onto the stage, greeted by thunderous applause. For a moment, she simply stood there, taking in the sea of faces before her. Then, with a warm smile, she began to speak. "Thank you all for coming today," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in her chest. "Today, we're going to explore something truly fascinating. Infinite series. At first glance, it might sound intimidating, but I promise you, it's one of the most elegant ideas in mathematics." Her opening line drew murmurs of interest from the crowd. Clara launched into an explanation, using relatable analogies to break down the concept. "Think of it like stacking slices of bread," she said, holding up a loaf she had borrowed from the cafeteria. "Each slice is tiny on its own, but when you stack them together, they form a whole loaf. Infinite series work the same way. We add infinitely small pieces to create something meaningful." The analogy sparked laughter and nods of understanding. Clara went on to explain convergence and divergence, illustrating her points with diagrams and interactive examples. She encouraged the audience to participate, asking questions and inviting volunteers to solve problems on the board. Before long, the atmosphere shifted from passive listening to active engagement. Students scribbled furiously in their notebooks while parents whispered excitedly to one another, marveling at how accessible Clara made the subject seem. By the end of the hour, the room erupted into applause once again. People lingered afterward, eager to ask questions or thank Clara personally. One father approached her with his teenage son, saying, "My boy has always struggled with math, but after hearing you today, he says he wants to give it another try. Thank you for showing him it doesn't have to be scary." Clara's heart swelled with pride. Moments like these reminded her why she had started teaching in the first place, not for recognition, but to inspire others to embrace learning. As she packed up her materials, she noticed Mr. Hargrove lingering near the exit. His expression was softer than usual, almost contemplative. When their eyes met, he gave a curt nod before walking away. It wasn't much, but it was a sign that perhaps he was beginning to see her in a new light. Word of Clara's success continued to spread, drawing attention from unexpected places. Local newspapers published glowing articles about her, dubbing her the librarian who changed math education. Social media buzzed with posts from students praising her lectures, while educators debated whether her unconventional methods could serve as a model for reforming traditional teaching practices. Even college professors reached out, inviting her to speak at conferences and workshops. Despite the growing acclaim, Clara remained humble. She declined several lucrative offers to write books or host online courses, explaining that her primary focus was still the students at her school. "I didn't set out to become famous," she told a reporter during a rare interview. "I just wanted to share my love of math and help people see it differently." Her dedication inspired others to take action. A group of seniors spearheaded an initiative to create a peer tutoring program based on Clara's methods, pairing struggling students with mentors who could guide them using creative, real-world examples. Teachers began incorporating her techniques into their own lessons, finding ways to make abstract concepts more relatable. Slowly but surely, Clara's influence began reshaping the culture of learning within the school. Challenges along the way. Everything was smooth sailing, however. As Clara's popularity grew, so did the resistance from certain quarters. Some faculty members resented her rising status, viewing her as an outsider encroaching on their domain. Others worried that her lack of formal credentials undermined the credibility of the institution. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, occasionally bubbling over during staff meetings. One particularly heated argument erupted when a teacher suggested integrating Clara's lectures into the official curriculum. "How can we justify giving someone without a degree such a prominent role?" another teacher snapped. "It sets a dangerous precedent," Principal Dawson intervened, attempting to mediate the dispute. "Clara isn't replacing anyone," he said firmly. She's complementing our efforts. Her impact on the students speaks for itself. Instead of focusing on titles, let's focus on outcomes." While the debate raged on, Clara chose to stay out of it. She understood the concerns but believed that actions spoke louder than words. If her lectures helped students learn and grow, then that was all that mattered. Still, the tension weighed on her, reminding her that change often comes with resistance. A turning point amidst the challenges. A turning point came when a former student returned to the school to thank Clara for changing his life. Alex had graduated 2 years earlier, a bright but disengaged teenager who had shown little interest in academics. After attending one of Clara's early lectures, he discovered a newfound passion for mathematics and pursued it in college. Now he was studying engineering and thriving. "I wouldn't be where I am today without you," Alex said during a surprise visit to the library. "You showed me that math isn't just numbers. It's a way of thinking, a way of solving problems. You gave me confidence when I didn't think I had any." His heartfelt words moved Clara deeply. They also silenced many of her critics. Seeing tangible evidence of her impact made it harder for detractors to dismiss her contributions. Even Mr. Hargrove softened slightly, admitting privately to Principal Dawson that Clara's methods might have merit after all. Building bridges, recognizing the need to address lingering tensions, Clara took the initiative to build bridges with her colleagues. She began attending more staff meetings, offering to collaborate on lesson plans and share resources. Her willingness to listen and adapt earned her respect from even the most skeptical teachers. Over time, the initial hostility faded, replaced by a grudging acknowledgement of her value to the school. Meanwhile, Clara continued refining her lectures, experimenting with new ways to engage her audience. She introduced hands-on activities, group projects, and real-world applications, ensuring that every session was as dynamic and interactive as possible. Attendance soared, with some sessions drawing crowds so large that additional rooms had to be opened to accommodate overflow. Through it all, Clara stayed grounded, focusing on the joy of teaching rather than the accolades. She reminded herself daily that her goal wasn't to prove anything to anyone. It was to inspire others to discover their potential. And judging by the smiles, questions, and enthusiasm surrounding her, she was succeeding beyond her wildest dreams. Looking ahead, as the semester drew to a close, Clara reflected on how far she had come. From a quiet librarian dismissed as unremarkable to a celebrated educator inspiring countless individuals, her journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. Yet she knew this was only the beginning. There were still students to reach, minds to spark, and barriers to break. With the support of her growing network of allies, students, parents, teachers, and administrators, Clara envisioned a future where education transcended rigid structures and embraced creativity, curiosity, and inclusivity. She dreamed of expanding her outreach beyond the school, perhaps mentoring aspiring educators or advocating for reforms in math education nationwide. For now, though, she focused on the present, cherishing every moment spent sharing her love of mathematics with others. Because in those moments, surrounded by eager learners and endless possibilities, Clara found her true purpose. And nothing, not skepticism, not criticism, not fear, could dim the light she had ignited in herself and those around her. As the months passed, Clara's influence continued to grow, both within the school and beyond. Her lectures became a cornerstone of the community, drawing people from all walks of life who were eager to learn and be inspired. What had started as a quiet act of defiance against mockery had transformed into something much larger, a movement that celebrated curiosity, resilience, and the power of education to change lives. Clara herself had changed too. While she remained humble and soft-spoken, there was a newfound confidence in her demeanor. She no longer doubted her abilities or second-guessed her place in the world. Teaching had taught her not only how to share knowledge, but also how to trust herself. Every time a student approached her with gratitude or excitement about math, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. It wasn't fame or recognition that drove her. It was the joy of seeing others discover their potential. One evening, as Clara, sat in the library organizing notes for her next lecture. Emily walked in carrying a stack of books. Over the past few months, Emily had blossomed under Clara's guidance. Once known for her sharp tongue and competitive streak, she had matured into a thoughtful, compassionate leader among her peers. Math had become her passion, and she often credited Clara with sparking that transformation. "Hey, Clara," Emily said, setting the books down on a nearby table. "I've been thinking, what you're doing here is incredible. You're changing so many lives, including mine." Clara looked up and smiled warmly. "Thank you, Emily. That means a lot, but remember, I'm just helping you find what was already inside you. You're the one putting in the effort." Emily shook her head. "No, it's more than that. You make people believe in themselves. Not everyone can do that." Her words lingered in the air, reminding Clara of why she kept pushing forward despite the challenges. For every doubter or critic, there were dozens of students like Emily. Students whose eyes lit up when they finally understood a difficult concept, whose confidence soared after solving a tough problem, whose futures brightened because someone believed in them. A legacy of empowerment. As Clara's reputation spread, opportunities began pouring in from outside the school. Local colleges invited her to speak at events, praising her innovative teaching methods and ability to connect with diverse audiences. Community centers asked her to lead workshops for adults looking to improve their math skills. Even businesses sought her advice on fostering creativity and problem-solving in their teams. Clara accepted some invitations but declined others, always prioritizing her role at the school where it all began. Her impact extended far beyond academics. Young women, in particular, found inspiration in Clara's story. In a world where intelligence was often equated with confidence or assertiveness, Clara proved that brilliance could be quiet and unassuming. She showed them that it was okay to be different, to pursue passions that didn't fit societal expectations, and to stand firm in the face of doubt or ridicule. One day, a shy freshman named Mia approached Clara after a lecture. "I've always loved math," Mia confessed, "but I never thought I was good enough. Watching you makes me feel like maybe I can try." Clara knelt down to meet Mia's gaze. "You absolutely can," she said gently. "Math isn't about being perfect. It's about asking questions and exploring possibilities. If you're curious, then you're already halfway there." Mia left the conversation beaming, clutching her notebook tightly. Moments like these reminded Clara that her work wasn't just about teaching equations. It was about empowering others to dream bigger and aim higher. Mr. Hargrove's redemption. Even Mr. Hargrove, once Clara's harshest critic, underwent a subtle transformation. At first, he resisted acknowledging her contributions, clinging to his pride and skepticism. But over time, he couldn't ignore the positive changes she brought to his students, or the respect they showed her. Slowly, he began incorporating elements of her teaching style into his own classes, using analogies and real-world examples to engage his students. One afternoon, he stopped by the library while Clara was grading papers. Clearing his throat awkwardly, he said, "I wanted to thank you. Your methods have helped my students understand concepts better than anything I've tried before." Clara looked up, surprised but pleased. "That's wonderful to hear," she replied sincerely. "We're all here to help them succeed." Mr. Hargrove hesitated, then added, "And I owe you an apology. I misjudged you, and I let my ego get in the way. You've earned your place here, Clara. No one can deny that." It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to Clara. Forgiveness came easily to her, and she accepted his apology with grace. From that moment on, their relationship improved significantly. They even collaborated on a project, combining Clara's creative approach with Mr. Hargrove's structured expertise to create a groundbreaking curriculum for advanced calculus. The ripple effect, Clara's influence rippled outward, touching lives in ways she never imagined. Former students returned years later to share how her lessons had shaped their careers and perspectives. One became a scientist working on renewable energy solutions, another a teacher determined to inspire the next generation. Each success story reinforced Clara's belief in the transformative power of education. Parents, too, expressed gratitude for the role she played in their children's lives. A mother once told her, "My daughter used to dread going to school, but now she talks about math like it's her favorite subject. You've given her a gift she'll carry forever." Clara cherished these moments, knowing they were proof that her efforts mattered, yet she never sought recognition for herself. When the local newspaper nominated her for an award honoring outstanding educators, she politely declined. "This isn't about me," she explained. "It's about the students and what they achieve." Looking back, moving forward years later, when Clara retired from her position at the school, the entire community came together to celebrate her legacy. The auditorium overflowed with former students, colleagues, and friends, each eager to express their gratitude. Speeches were given, tears were shed, and laughter filled the room as people shared stories of how Clara had touched their lives. In her closing remarks, Clara stood at the podium, her voice steady and heartfelt. "When I first walked into Mr. Hargrove's classroom with that notebook, I didn't know what would happen. All I knew was that I loved math and wanted to share that love with others. What followed has been the greatest adventure of my life." She paused, scanning the sea of familiar faces. "To all of you, students, teachers, parents, I want to say thank you. You've shown me that greatness doesn't come from titles or degrees. It comes from curiosity, kindness, and the courage to keep learning. If I've inspired any of you to ask questions, to explore new ideas, or to believe in yourselves, then I've done my job." The standing ovation that followed lasted several minutes, echoing through the halls long after the ceremony ended. As Clara stepped off the stage, surrounded by smiling faces and heartfelt embraces, she felt a profound sense of peace. Her journey had been challenging at times, but it had also been rich with meaning and purpose. A quiet brilliance in retirement, Clara continued to mentor young learners and advocate for accessible education. She wrote articles, gave occasional talks, and volunteered at community centers, always emphasizing the importance of curiosity and inclusivity. Though she no longer stood in front of a classroom, her spirit lived on in the countless lives she had touched. To those who knew her, Clara remained a symbol of quiet brilliance, a reminder that intelligence isn't defined by appearances or circumstances. Her story inspired generations to embrace their passions, defy expectations, and trust in the power of perseverance. And so Clara's legacy endured, not as a tale of fame or fortune, but as a testament to the enduring impact of humility, dedication, and love. For in the end, it wasn't the accolades or achievements that defined her. It was the simple yet extraordinary act of sharing her light with the world, one equation at a time.